In the quiet moments before a truth is revealed, there is often a fragile illusion of safety, a belief that time has erased evidence, that age has softened memory, that a crime committed in youth can be buried beneath decades of ordinary life. This is the story of how that illusion shattered. It is the story of a teenager who believed he had gotten away with murder, and of the moment 26 years later when he realized he had not. For more than a quarter of a century, a family lived without answers. Investigators carried a case that refused to die, and a killer carried a secret that time could not absolve. This is a story about patience, persistence, and the unrelenting nature of truth. This is Silent Authority. In the summer of the late 1990s, a small community was shaken by a crime so sudden and so brutal that it left behind more questions than evidence. The victim was young, known, loved, someone whose absence was immediately felt. On a quiet afternoon, the victim failed to return home. At first, there was no panic, just the ordinary assumptions of youth and routine. But as hours turned into night, and night into morning, concern hardened into fear. By the time the body was discovered, the town had already begun to understand that something was terribly wrong. The crime scene offered little comfort. There were no clear witnesses, no obvious suspects, no confession. What investigators did find suggested violence, desperation, and a struggle that ended too quickly for anyone nearby to intervene. The victim had been killed by someone who knew them, or at least knew enough to get close. From the beginning, the investigation faced a critical challenge. The suspect pool was wide, but the evidence was thin. Detectives interviewed classmates, neighbors, friends, and family. Tips came in, but most led nowhere. Rumors spread, as they often do in close-knit communities, but rumors do not hold up in court. Behind the scenes, investigators documented every detail. Fibers, statements, timelines, a small amount of biological evidence was collected, but in the era before widespread DNA databases, it offered little immediate value. The case grew cold, not because it was forgotten, but because it had nowhere else to go. For the family of the victim, time did not heal. It only deepened the absence. Birthdays passed, holidays arrived with an empty chair, life moved forward, but always with a quiet, unresolved grief. They were told the case was still open, that investigators had not given up, but as years turned into decades, hope became something that had to be actively protected from disappointment. Meanwhile, the person responsible did exactly what many killers believe will save them. He aged. At the time of the crime, he was a teenager, young enough to believe that adulthood would wash away what he had done, that his face would change, that his voice would deepen, that memory itself would become unreliable. He finished school, he worked, he built a life that appeared unremarkable from the outside. To friends, co-workers, and even family, he was just another person navigating adulthood. But beneath that surface was a moment frozen in time, the moment when he crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Psychologically, crimes committed in adolescence often occupy a dangerous space. Teenagers are capable of extreme violence, but they are also prone to believing they are invisible to consequence. The developing brain does not fully grasp permanence. Risk feels abstract. Accountability feels distant. For this killer, that immaturity was compounded by opportunity and silence. No one accused him. No one confronted him. And as the years passed, he took that silence as proof of success, but law enforcement never stopped working the case. Cold cases are not dormant. They are waiting for technology, waiting for a witness to remember, waiting for someone to talk, waiting for time to turn against the person who thinks it is on their side. In the early 2000s, forensic science began to accelerate, DNA analysis improved, databases expanded, evidence once considered inconclusive gained new potential. Detectives revisited old cases, including this one. They reopened boxes that had not been touched in years. They reread interview transcripts. They re-examined physical evidence with modern techniques. The biological sample collected decades earlier was still preserved, and now, for the first time, it could speak. Investigators entered the DNA profile into national databases. At first, there was no match, but technology has a way of narrowing possibilities, even when it does not immediately identify a name. Years later, the rise of familial DNA searching changed everything. Instead of looking for an exact match, investigators could now look for relatives. A partial hit appeared. It was not the killer, but it was close enough to matter. From there, detectives began building a family tree. Public records, social media, old addresses, school rosters. Slowly, a name surfaced. A man who had lived in the area at the time of the crime. A man who had been a teenager then. A man who had never been arrested for anything serious. On paper, he did not look like a killer. That is often the point. Investigators did not rush. They watched, they verified, they cross-checked timelines and alibis. They noted that his story from years earlier contained inconsistencies, small ones, easily overlooked at the time, but significant in retrospect. They noticed behavioral patterns that aligned with the crime. Still, suspicion is not proof. What they needed was confirmation. In a move now common in cold case investigations, detectives collected discarded DNA, something the suspect had touched and thrown away. Something he believed was meaningless, a cup, a utensil, a cigarette. When the results came back, the match was undeniable. After 26 years, the evidence finally had a name, but before an arrest could be made, investigators wanted one more thing. They wanted to see his reaction. They invited him in for a conversation. By this point, he was middle-aged, a lifetime removed from the teenager he once was, or so he believed. The interview began calmly, casual questions, references to the past, neutral tone. He appeared relaxed, cooperative, confident. Then the questions shifted. Details were introduced, details only the killer would know. His body language changed. He adjusted his posture. His breathing altered. His eyes darted, just briefly, before settling again. Experienced investigators recognized these moments. This was the beginning of realization. They did not accuse him outright. They let silence do the work. Finally, they mentioned DNA. They explained the advances in technology, the databases, the match, and in that instant, 26 years collapsed into a single expression. The confidence drained from his face. For the first time since the day of the murder, he understood something he had avoided for decades. He had not escaped. Witnesses to the interview later described it as a visible unraveling. His shoulders slumped. His voice faltered. He asked questions that revealed more than he intended. He wanted to know how they found him. He wanted to know how long they had been watching. He wanted to know if there was any way out. There was not. When he was arrested, the news traveled quickly. For the victim's family, the call they had waited decades for finally came. There was relief, but it was not simple. Justice delayed is justice complicated. They had lived most of their lives without answers. Now, answers arrived with the weight of lost time. In court, the killer was no longer a teenager, but the law did not forget who he was when the crime was committed. The trial focused not on who he had become, but on what he had done. Evidence was presented carefully. Respectfully, the victim's life was not reduced to a footnote. Witnesses testified. Forensic experts explained the science. Investigators walked the jury through a quarter-century of persistence. When the verdict was read, it was not met with celebration. It was met with quiet acknowledgement. A wrong had been named, but not undone. Today, the case stands as a reminder of several uncomfortable truths. That time does not erase guilt, that youth does not excuse violence, and that silence is not the same as forgiveness. For the killer, the realization came too late to change the outcome. For the family, justice arrived, but it could never return what was taken. Cold cases teach us that truth is patient. It waits in evidence boxes. It waits in memories. It waits in technology not yet invented. And eventually, it waits in the eyes of the person who realizes the past has caught up with them. At Silent Authority, we tell these stories not to glorify crime, but to honor victims and to remind ourselves that accountability does not expire. No matter how long it takes, no matter how old the secret becomes, truth, when it comes, arrives all at once. And it always demands to be answered